Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you too. You well?
Yeah, good. Yeah. Everyone's going down with the virus around me and various other illnesses, but it's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that as well. It's a bit strange, but anyway, we'll see what happens. Who knows? Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, innovation, technology, change, culture. And we've got a lot to cover this week. We've got some news. We've got a bit of a feature looking at the CGI PPL collapse. And we're going to hear from Paul Rich as well on his take on that. But let's start with some news, Ben. And I'll kick things off. So I saw this week that the Lloyds Bank, is fined 90 million for letters for unsupported pledges on insurance. So this picks up on our main feature of last week, which was looking at fair value. And there's new rules coming in around fair value, but this is based on the current rules. Basically, they were sending out renewal letters to customers suggesting that they were going to get a competitive price, and they were also going to get a discount because they were an existing customer. And basically, they've found out that they didn't. So this was over a period between 2009 and 2017, so quite a long time. 87% of cases where the letters were sent, policy holders opted to renew. So obviously a massive renewal rate there. But what the FCA say is that they had not taken steps to check that the claim was accurate, and they had failed to ensure that the wordings used with millions of home insurance renewals communications was clear, fair, and not misleading. So this is just symptomatic, I think, of the way that the regulator is going to go around this area of fair value that we talked about a lot last week. And as we said last week, it's not around a tick box exercise to say that you've done something. It's around the culture of the organization. You know, when you read this story, you do just question, how did this happen? What kind of culture within the organization didn't go, is that the right thing to do? Is that really serving our customers properly? I think that's where the focus will be, rather than just a tick box exercise for them anyway.
Yeah, it's a clear breach, obviously, from what's been written here, and almost, fibbing about the policy, really, that they're saying it's got a discount where it hasn't. I'm sure there's a lot of this that goes on. But the fair value is going to go a lot further than this. And the interesting thing about this is it does uncover, as you say, the culture of the organisation. So once you start to look into the regulator starts to look into the organisation, and these kind of public things come out, then it may be that some organisations are really found out over this, so they're going to have to really gear up and start checking what's really going on with their product selling. And this is particularly in the personal line space, but remember, it also applies to commercial lines in the SME mid-market space, not actually to the complex risks, but a fair chunk of the market is covered by this regulation. And I've read a few things that have sort of said, it's primarily about personal lines, but I don't think the insurers should just think they're not involved in this, and nor the brokers either.
Yeah, so we shall keep an eye on that. So Next up, we have got obviously the football. So it was a great night on Wednesday. Obviously, you could feel the excitement coming through the TV from the stadium. It was electric. So I don't know what it must have been like to actually have been there. But obviously, the final on Sunday. Any predictions, Ben? Coming home or not coming home? What do you think?
Oh, I'm very nervous about this one. Funnily enough, in a way, my head says that England will win because I think they've been technically a very good side, unlike in previous years. But at the same time, the Italians are really good. Wow, I think it's going to go to. I'll predict it goes to extra time.
Yep.
And I'll predict it'll be pretty tight. I don't think it'll go to penalties. I think England might snatch it by a goal late on in the extra time.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I think we might just have a bit more energy. I think it was impressive the way that we carried on going in extra time, and Denmark clearly ran out of steam.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. But I think you've got some great examples of the best supporter flags.
Yes, I didn't find this. It was on the news. So, but this is the best flag voted by whoever, a few journalists over a beer. Stop putting pineapple on the pizza from an Italian.
Brilliant.
And actually, even that is nothing's original in the modern world, is it? Actually, you know who originally said this?
No.
Gordon Ramsay. He had this rant about pineapple several years ago, but it's obviously been picked up again as this meme by the Italians to rile us. I don't know that we do in England or in the UK put pineapple on pizza. Is this just a general kind of, just generally don't do it? Or is it aimed? Do you think it's aimed at the Brits or somebody or the Americans? It should be the Americans, shouldn't it? Really, but they're not even in the tournament. What's going on?
No, I don't know. I don't really mind, but I just think it's funny.
It's just good. It's just a thing to generally say, isn't it? Regardless, doesn't really matter why you say it. Just stop putting the pineapple on the pizza. It's like a euphemism.
Yeah, it'll be a GIF, won't it, somewhere? Right. So just before we leave the sporting theme, we talked last week about kind of a sport becoming a bit data centric, and everything might be turning towards Formula One. Everything's controlled by a team behind it and everything like that. And we were talking about the Cavendish win mainly. But then at the Tour de France, literally the following day, had Pogacar basically just riding up the road on his own. That's him looking back at. Yeah. I think it's Carapaz, who's also a really good climber. He just rode away. So it's kind of we were wrong on that. There is innovation in sport, and if you look at the Ineos Grenadiers now that would have been controlling the race, sitting on the front, they look all over the place, and that strategy seems to have gone. So interesting that we. And
there was another example of a guy who had done on the power meter. Was really struggling over the hills. One of the sprinters who just rode it really, really hard with the power meter running and the people in his ear, and he missed it by 2 seconds and got swept up. But the nice end to the story is they let him back in. They let him in. They reprieved him because he was
only 2 seconds.
He was so tight on it. So there's humanity there in the Tour de France. What are they called? Those people who run it? Judges. I'll come back to Commissars. That's it. Something like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Good. Okay. Great. Right. So you've got some real news, Ben, around the CGI PPL collapse that we saw. When was it? Thursday, I think.
Yeah, I think they started to come out last week. There's not really been an official announcement, but it has featured in the press. And I just want to give the quick background because we're going to go on to an interview because we did an interview special with Paul Rich, which you'll introduce in a minute. But just very quickly, the background for this is the whole. It's being painted as another failure of the Lloyd's market in terms of its ability to get a technology. Trading platform to work. This is the flagship PPL of the business, and CGI was with Deloitte, I think, anointed as the software technology business that would refresh PPL, which is an old technology. We've talked about it on here before. That is not user friendly, not very popular. even as well. It's popular in the sense that it's used a lot, but it's not popular with those who are using it. So the user interface is poor, and I'll come back to that. Interestingly, this is Juliet Lockstone. I'm not so sure if she's even still there. I hope she is, or she's still got a great career somewhere. But this is a CGI person talking in 2019, I think before they were appointed, and their view was about this. Is Lloyd's, in this blog article, is Lloyd's going to really have a system that is customer focused, in other words, joined up all the way through the value chain and delivers benefits, which we've talked about before. That's what systems are supposed to do, or supposed to enable. Or is it just a way of, as she describes it, kind of enabling Lloyd's to move up the value chain, but a more effective implementation of the current business. Now, this has been a theme that Instech London has picked up as well in their report. Now, they probably will talk to one another, because these people do, I think, when they're not on computers. And she's used this phrase, which seems to have been repeated. Obviously, it's in that community, the digital lipstick on a legacy pig. Or is it truly transformational? So now, I don't know whether now this has been the cause of the problem, but interestingly, I went back to the Instech London report, which I would on digital trading platforms, which is a really good report, actually, and it sort of sets out everything very clearly. But
yeah, it's good.
And thanks to Robin Mertens and the team there for doing that, I would say. But what Robin and his team talked about, there's a quote in there. It says about design by committee, which effectively this was or is. It says, moreover, vendors seldom have the negotiating strength to challenge when committees steer the wrong way. So if you look at this statement and you think about why it's fallen apart, now it could have fallen apart as well. There may be lots of reasons for financial reasons or other contractual reasons related to that, but it could also have potentially fallen apart because of this. Just the committee was pushing it the wrong way, and CGI have some principles and say, look, it's just not going to work like this. It's going to be a disaster or not, or whatever. Now, the view of the Insider, which wrote a long piece on this in the week, it's Insider in Full, is could be an opportunity, could be an upside to this, in that Lloyd's has at least pulled out quickly. At least they've got on with it, and they've not, sort of as they often do, put their heads down. And if they say it often enough, people will start to believe it's a good thing. So they've actually sort of done this, although they're not openly kind of admitting it. It's just come out that it's happened. So there's not that much transparency in reality. We'll talk about it in a second, but it's a big deal, and it could be people are now expected to wait till 2022 for this, whatever comes in new. That's the first date they've given. So let's assume if it's Lloyd's, that'll be about 2026 then for the next iteration. Not a good look.
No. So we thought we would ask friend of the show and technology expert Paul Rich to just comment on this and just help us kind of dissect the story a bit. Now Paul is a friend of the show. He loves the production value, so I hope he appreciates what I've done with the intro to his interview. So here we go with Paul's interview. So welcome back, Paul, friend of the show. We thought you could give us a bit of insight into the story that we've just been talking about CGI and PPL. Perhaps you just give us your take on what's happened, and more importantly, what the implications might be.
Well, I think that whilst I'm not intimately involved with the relationships in place, the commercial sort of aspects of all of this, I think just from, my general sense at a distance, and also speaking to people who perhaps are a little bit closer to it, there just seems to have been a bit of a breakdown in the expectations that were stated, when this was originally sort of scoped out, and, where they are in their delivery at the moment. There's obviously something that has gone on within the project, but the delivery seems to have stalled. Who knows exactly what the mechanics of this particular relationship breakdown, were. I think we can probably all guess that, there's lots of dynamics in play here. Politics is going to be there. There's going to be all sorts of different sort of competing egos, and it's like any project that is run by committee, and that's what this one is particularly. And I think that's where the advantage of other sort of commercial offerings do sort of proceed far more effectively. They're not run by different organizations with different sort of competing sort of stakeholder managers and everything. It's disappointing but not surprising. The implications, who knows really. I think in the future we'll probably, in the short to medium term, we'll probably see a little bit of a scramble by other technology provisions to sort of come into this particular space. But I think it's also worth pointing out that PPL is doing a job. The volumes going through PPL, we're certainly led to believe they are strong. They've been increasing, obviously, through COVID and the situation that everyone's been put in there. But I think that the future roadmap, and to push it out now to a year from now, you've got to question its ongoing sort of viability in its current form. Is it going to reposition itself? What will happen? Who knows?
Yeah, it's really interesting that they've pushed that out so far. I mean, if you look at any other technology, and Ben, you've probably got some insight on this. The updates are not done on an annual or biannual basis anymore. They're continually updated.
Yeah,
and they take into account user feedback, and then the next iteration comes through. I think that's the most disappointing thing for me.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Jeremy. I think the research that we've done is all prior to this happening, and who knows whether any users are even aware of this happening. It's more the kind of cognoscenti, I suppose, isn't it? Because it's not exactly being publicised, or there's no kind of transparent, open statement about what it means, which is a shame. I think that's a real shame that we've got that situation now in London where we're not told, especially when so much money has been spent as well. I think Burgess and Bolton deserves to know, but I genuinely think that actually the rest of the market who has a stake in this deserves to know more about this. And you just feel, God, there's no sort of openness. But just go back to the research that we were doing. It was all about user experience. I think the frustration, I think, with PPL is not that it doesn't, as Paul said rightly, it does do a job, but it's quite a narrow job. And I think the expectation is there needs to be a lot more. And that's not all about integration with back office systems. That would all be very nice, and people would always ask for those things. It's more about just the user experience, the simple stuff. Could we do queries on this sort of stuff? Really, really simple things that any other piece of software in this day and age should be able to do. But there's been no movement. That's what I'm saying. It's been promised and it hasn't happened. So this now is another, I think is another kind of nail in the coffin, because it's obviously a massive problem for them. This wouldn't have happened if they could possibly help it, and they're back to square one. So I guess the date they've put is just a guess, really. Late 2022. Well, that's basically what you'd say if you didn't want it to be 2023 and you didn't have any thought that it would really happen in 2022. So you read between the lines, and those users, I think, are just going to look at this once they get this, and effectively know that there's going to be no real proper updates, or the whole thing that was promised is not going to happen for another year and a half or 2 years, or maybe never. Well, I'd kind of go sod it. If I'm an underwriter or broker worth my salt, and I'd kind of go to a place, or I'd be putting pressure on my management to say, just ditch it, get something else that we can use, right? I'm not waiting around for 2 years for this thing. Especially with Lloyd's track record.
Absolutely. I think, in some ways, the word for me that really sort of springs to my mind in all of this is confidence. There's, from the outside looking in, I'm on the outside looking in, and I'm thinking, how has this come to be? But if more importantly, how does this look from the outside looking into the London market? This is a pillar of it's messaging to the rest of the world that we want, we want this to be a globally sort of accepted insurance marketplace where it's easy, seamless, and sort of frictionless to do business. But if we can't actually sort out one of those fundamental trading sort of transactional platforms, I just wonder how much more people can actually take. And I think that this is something which needs to be managed very, very carefully.
And you're right, Paul. It's the flagship, isn't it? Really. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, all the back office stuff. Of course, we all know, and technologists know that's important, and claims and all that. But fundamentally, the market is driven by sales of insurance and broking and trading. And if the premise of Future at Lloyd's really, I think, it was really about all of that. And this has been the least well managed part of it, the bit that they've pretty much handed over to the open market, and now ostensibly is just, floundering, really, in terms of delivery. So you're right, it is about confidence when the flagship part of this doesn't deliver. And I'd be interested to see over the next few days, because, or the next few weeks, as to whether, you get kind of falling out between Libra and people like that who are involved, because it's like, kind of puts them on the spot a bit, doesn't it?
It does. Absolutely, it does. I think as well, that's, you guys have talked about this on the show a great deal. A lot of this can be sort of drilled down to customer user experience. And I think people's expectations are just so much more now. And when it falls short, people aren't as accepting of that as perhaps they were, because they realize that the way in which technology provisions are delivered, they're far more agile than they used to be 5 years ago and 10 years ago, where this would probably quite possibly have happened, and it has happened with other market-wide initiatives. But in this day and age, I just don't think that there is an acceptance or a tolerance that this kind of thing can happen. This is something which is unacceptable in many people's eyes.
Yes, and the other thing I suppose is that the circumstances really matter, don't they? Because context is everything. So we've just had the pandemic, and we've had the blowing of the trumpet about how brilliant PPL was and how it saved the market and so on. And yet, people's memories are quite short, and I think they'll say, now we actually have to come out of that, and we have to get on with business, and we want to do things, and we want to trade properly. And I think we're going to quickly evolve into those things that you mentioned there, where demands will be much, expectations. We say customer expectations have risen, but broker expectations would have risen. People in these jobs who are going to say, I'm going to work hybrid jobs, from home and in the office and on my phone and everything else. If that's even partially correct, then what we've got is not fit for purpose. And it's not like other companies are not coming in. I think you're right about the land grab. I think that sequels will be coming in, and the Verisks, and the others will come in with this, and Whitespace should do well, I suppose, out of all of this. I'm sure in the short term there probably is, within Whitespace and other placing platforms, there is they won't be rubbing their hands with glee at this. No. I don't think that this isn't about mocking the project. We, as I said earlier, we all want this to succeed. This is something fundamentally important to the market, but something has gone terribly wrong for this to have happened in this day and age at such a critical moment in the market's evolution. There is so much going on at the moment, so much change going on right across the marketplace. And for your cornerstone, initiative to be stumbling and, on the face of it, failing at this stage is a huge thing. One of the things we talk about a lot, obviously, is customer focus, and we're strong believers. I'm a strong believer that the market needs much, much more customer focus. Arguably, Whitespace has got customer focus, and PPO was kind of more of a functional kind of offering, really, to fill a gap and then to be developed, and the promise was to develop it. I just wonder whether really in the end, in competitive markets, you really have to have businesses and teams that work really hard at that customer focus and make that work. Otherwise, they're going to keep on failing, because people don't buy that ultimately. They don't use it. They don't want to use it. You can mandate it for only so long, can't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, of course you can. You've got to have that kind of groundswell of support for, and there has been, I'm sure, for the use of these platforms. We can all see it's a common sense no-brainer, but there's just something that has failed in terms of the delivery.
And I think the goodwill can only last so long, though, can't it? And that's what I'd say from the research, is that lots of people are saying, yeah, it's been fine. It's been kind of okay for doing a narrow range of things around binding policies, but actually we now need something that's 21st century that does more than this. Yeah. And they are very adamant about that. So I don't think you've got much. I don't think Lloyd's, the market, has much time, to make sure that people are happy with, are content with that. And they can't be, going out a year or more now is the worst bit of this, I think. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, I think the uncertainty that this creates, if you can imagine yourself, if you're a CTO or a CIO at a big sort of organization, the amount of time, effort and resource that's been sort of put into this particular project, shoehorning it, making it work, doing a job. And then for this to happen, businesses like certainty, or an element, as much certainty as they possibly can. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not going to have a core functioning platform in my business for at least 12 months, you're going to have a rethink of your whole strategy of engagement, your distribution strategy, your commercial relationships. Everything is kind of predicated on these platforms actually working and doing the job they do. And if it doesn't, you're going to have a rethink and think, okay, do we align ourselves to other platforms, other distribution models, all sorts of different things. So I don't think this isn't just about technology doing or not doing a job. I think it's far bigger than that. And it's something symptomatic of sometimes the projects that do try to get delivered in this way and do fall short. We've seen it before. So therefore, it's not a surprise. It is a disappointment. I just hope that something can be sort of remedied from this, and that Lloyd's does take a really good hard look at itself and understand the challenges and why this has perhaps happened, and then go to the market and say, help us. There is a market wanting to help. Well, thanks, Paul, for giving us some insight into that story. We'll keep an eye on it, and I'm no doubt we'll invite you back on as the dust settles and the landscape starts to show itself. But thanks very much for coming on and giving us that insight. You're very welcome. Anytime. Yeah, it was good of Paul to come on. Thanks very much for that. And I was just making a few notes there. I think he's right. The confidence element of this, it's more than just a technology project. It's got wider and deeper implications than that. And it's about customer and user experience at the end of the day, if you're going to get people engaged and wanting to use this stuff. So it was good. It was good to chat with Paul. Good thoughts there. Yeah, it's interesting. I've been looking around at, as I said earlier on, some of the literature and the things that have been said about this. And I think a lot of what's happened is that a lot of this debate about the systems and the technologies that are required happen in the sort of technology world and space. And I'm not in any way really disparaging those types of people, and they do a great job, and they're all developing businesses, and they're trying to engage with what is not an easy industry to engage with. But I'll say here and now, I think they've missed a point of this, and that's why this has failed. And I think one of the reasons it's failed is because what in the end we've talked about a lot on this show and is talked about elsewhere is all of this is about people. It's not about what these technologies do. Every technology that's ever been brought out was brought out for one reason and gets used for all sorts of other things. And most technology nowadays, from cameras to hi-fi to bikes, whatever it is, that it's put out there, and then people do things with it, and we all talk about the things they do with it. We don't really talk particularly about the technology as an end in itself. So it's how it interacts with people. I think that's where Lloyd's has really missed the point in all of its development. It's never really listened properly to people. And this sounds like a criticism, and it is a criticism, actually. I think they should have listened, and I think they culturally don't do that. And the reason for that is I think that because it enables, that's why the user interface always comes out as so important for people. But it's talked about in technology circles as having a good user interface. It's like, I'm clever with software, I can make it really easy to use. That's not really the point. I think what great technology like our smartphones do is it actually enables people to be more involved, not less involved. But if you look at a lot of the discussions that go on in this, it's like, and I'm pointing here at people like Intertech London, and I will have this debate with them quite happily about this, where they talk about embedded insurance and they talk about parametrics. They talk about all these things where no human is involved. You know, this nirvana of a digital world where all this stuff is going on. And, you know, and yes, there is some of that. There is the no-touch stuff. But they are infatuated with it. And I think these are the sort of people who talk and advise, and they do those sort of things, and they get infatuated with it. But the reality is not some clever argument about this. It's that you want people to use this in the end. And if you know, I had a business partner for many years. He said, and every piece of technology we brought into the business, he said, Ben, if people don't use it, ditch it. And he was right. You know, it was absolutely right. I said, if nobody's using it, it doesn't matter what we spent on it, ditch it as fast as we can and use the thing that they use, because that's it. And I think that's true. But the belief is that if you just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, people will change and they'll shift. They don't, right? And so we've got to have technologies that fit with the culture of the market and the people and what they want to do. We've got to listen much more to people in the market and their needs. And that's all the brokers, all the underwriters, you know, because they're a frustrated bunch at the moment. Yeah,
definitely. I think we've all got stories about where technology, you know, somewhere in the organization, someone's got a great idea about, I remember a CRM system being put in a company I was working for, and they spent an absolute fortune on it. I mean, and the problem was they hadn't done any kind of research into what the different departments do, and so what they needed for a CRM system, so they could have one thing that would do 80% or 90% of what people did. So they put this thing in, cost a fortune, didn't work. It was about 20 clicks to actually build a list of something. If you're on the phone to a customer and it takes you 20 clicks to get the answer,
you stop using it.
And so people just started using spreadsheets.
Yeah.
They would like put, okay, here's a spreadsheet with this answer to this question, or, you know, and that was it. And so I think that eventually they threw it away, but because they'd invested so much, they tried to make it work. But yeah, it's incredible how that happens. And that then comes back to the culture of the organization that I started with at the top of the show when we was talking about the fine. You know, if you've got that either a committee driven or isolated teams that don't talk to other teams internally, or whatever it is, you've got, or a hierarchical approach where you've got a very strong team at the top that think they know best what to do and push everything down. It just doesn't work anymore. I don't think it ever worked anyway. But
no, and the big question really, which is again, you know, I'll again commend Robin Mertens on this, is I know he's not the only one saying it, but he raises the point very rightly, which is that technology these days, and Paul, one of his most interesting points was, I think, to say that, you know, 20 years ago, this may not have mattered because everything was failing in technology and everybody had low expectations. But when we've seen what can work and what magic can happen, as Bart Patrick puts it, you know, that's what it is. You know, that's what technologists know. Magic, that sort of magic doesn't just happen. It happens because people really, really work at it and they know the software much better. They're experts at what they deliver. So I think partly this is about what sort of technology are we getting? In other words, what sort of approach to that technology, not here it is and it has these functions and those should be great because they'll allow us to do that thing we did before, but on a computer. That's what's happened with most of the Lloyd's technology, is literally, the digital lipstick on the legacy pig. I'll keep reusing that phrase. It's a bit too long, isn't it? But anyway, I'll keep using it. And
turns into an acronym.
Just like it. Anytime you use pig, it's good in a conversation. You pig, and but that's what Mertens and other people are talking about it, said that businesses these days, the technology and the business are interchangeable. The technology is the business to some extent, and that is a point that I take on board from what they're saying. I think you have to be quite careful with that, but it is that we talked about this last week at the digital mindset. It is that actually your technology doesn't kind of sit separately from you. It's that it's you. You are part of the technology. It should be seamless, as you just described with that CRM system. It should completely seamlessly enable you to do what you want to do, like your smartphone does. You do all sorts of everybody. Smartphone technology allows you to still have your personality, right? Just think of it that way. PPL doesn't. PPL forces you to do certain things. So crappy old technology forces you to do 20 clicks. It forces you to use PDFs. It forces you to download stuff and use a spreadsheet. That's killing you every time you use it. It's killing your creativity. It's killing your morale. It kills everything. So I come back to the point. I wonder whether in the end, doing this by committee with all those views and all those opinions, CGI just looked at it and said, my God, these people have got no clue. And they won't be the first. These people have got no clue what proper modern technology is about. And we want nothing to do with it.
Possibly. We shall see. We'll see what happens.
Or they just wouldn't pay for it.
Yeah. Could be, couldn't it? Good. Right, we're running out of time. We were going to talk about the London Market Claims preview show, but the CGI kind of took that over. So we'll bump that into next week. We'll talk about London Market Claims. Because we had a good session this week, so it was good. Excellent. Right. What are we doing this weekend, Ben? Obviously on Sunday. Well, it's Sunday is sports day because it's the final of the Wimbledon and
Tour de France, Cavendish on the Champs-Élysées.
No, is that this week or next week?
Oh, it's next week. Yeah, no, it's not the final. It's just a mountain climb, isn't it?
Yeah, going up some massive mountain. So Sunday is sports day for me anyway.
Yeah, that's it. I think it is essentially for me. There'll be a barbecue going on. I've just heard that my son's been quarantined and staff. Anyway, that's who cares anymore. The strange, mad, surreal world we live in.
Yeah, I don't understand it, and I don't want to pass comment. I can't be bothered.
I'm only saying 60,000 people at a football match and everybody else gathering, and then my son sees one person in his school has to come home for 10 days.
Yeah.
There's no real rhyme or reason to that, surely.
No,
it should be good. It's going to be a great weekend. I'm a little bit in trepidation of Sunday. I'm trying to convince myself that I'll be okay if we don't win.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
I will be because I put £10 on Italy to win the whole thing. So either way, I'm a winner.
That doesn't work. You know that doesn't work.
I know. I'm quite happily paid the £10 now. And the winnings, actually, for that matter.
I still remember when England went out to Argentina, sitting on a train going up to London, almost like grief. It was that bad. It's like I'd lost a close family member. I was just sitting there thinking, when will this terrible feeling leave me? I'm just hoping that Monday isn't like that.
Yeah. Oh, dear. We shall see. Well, we'll catch up next Friday and we'll reflect on all the sport and everything else that's happened as well. So thanks very much, Ben. See you all next week.
Thanks, Jeremy. Bye.